Oh,
Awesome.
Yeah. Just talking
I'm
anyways.
just gonna grab this mezcal. This is Musica con Mezcal. I am Brandon Bagg, and I'm here with Krystle Dos Santos.
Hey.
I'm gonna pour you a little bit of mezcal there
Thanks.
because that's the name of the show.
We got to do it. We have to.
Krystle, how are you? Thanks
I'm
for coming.
good. Thanks. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. I appreciate this.
So we were just before rolling. We were just talking about acting in the city, which is one of the many hats you wear.
It's a thing. We do.
You're an actor. You're a singer. You're a creator. You're a performer. You've toured.
That sounds exhausting. Do I have to be all those?
I mean, no, you don't.
I know.
You don't.
It's a choice.
Yeah,
That's
you also
what's
just
crazy.
mentioned a couple minutes ago that you're a mother, so you've got that thrown in there as well.
Whew.
So I don't know. When do you sleep?
You know, that's a great question. And the answer is I don't. The answer is I have a full bed full of tiny people who have very busy legs. And at any given moment, like a penny could drop and I will be up and ready to like move, like prevent the crisis or like change the diaper or I don't know what, right?
And how often are you unsuccessful at preventing said crisis?
I'm pretty good, actually.
That's the real fun story.
That is the real fun story.
It's like I've usually got it on lockdown, but on the times that I fail.
Except when, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. No, I mean, it's been a lot. And they're two toddlers now, right? The
Yeah,
youngest just turned 1 and the other one's 3.5. And so the 3.5-year-old is now flexing her ability to defy and resist and not listen. And the 1-year-old is just climbing all over everything all the time, ready
Including
to just
the 3-year-old.
including especially the 3-year-old. So together it's absolute madness. And I both highly recommend it and I don't recommend it at all.
Yeah, it's that duality, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's good times.
So you have been, you've got a long-standing show at Guilt and Company.
Yeah.
Underneath the Harlem Moon, which is how many years now? Like it's got to be.
This will
at
be
least
the 9th year.
9 years.
Ninth year now. Yeah, I think we started in 2014 because it started actually in 2013. The original show was because I was doing Dreamgirls.
Yeah. I remember when that was here.
Yeah. And it was an amazing snapshot of a moment of a job there. That was my first ever professional musical, and 17 Black actors came together in Vancouver and did this, production for 2 months. And it was actually a dream. Like we went to work every day and we're just like, we get to do this. Like, look at us. How fun. What a great group. What a great crowd. So positive, so celebratory of one another. And I noticed that, other than the basically 4 stars of the show or 5, that everyone was talented. And I wanted to dive into that. And I was like, well, I've played at this place, Guilt & Co. a few times. Maybe they'll let me have a show where we can all be on stage so that we can share what each other have and show what we have to each other. And that's how it started. And then I think it was April of the next year that Megan asked me, would you come and do this as a monthly show? And I was just like, what?
Megan Davidson.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Like way back then.
I was working the door at Guild.
Damn, that's crazy. It's amazing. But yeah, that's how it started. So I don't have the exact receipts and my memory has holes in it. But I think that's when it became a regular thing, is like nearly a full year later. But
And did it start with because it's almost like it's run a bit like almost like a variety show with different
guests,
singers and different guests, and they come up and you host it and you pick new vocalists. And I've seen so many different amazing vocalists come through there under that show, and then do
their own thing,
and then go on to do their own thing.
Isn't that the sweetest deal? I love it.
And was that the vision of it at the beginning, or was it just kind of like
not at
evolved
all
naturally?
Yeah, it sort of evolved naturally. It was all just about, as a singer, it's really hard to jam with bands. And I think that there's always been that sort of, this is not a band thing at Guilt as well. And there was a sort of like draw to want to be a part of something like that. But as a singer, it's like, no, I need to rehearse. I need to know what I'm singing. I can't just go up and do a sax solo like a horn player can. as a vocalist. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if there was like the foundation of a band that could learn the songs for the singer? And there are so many people out there that don't know where to start when it comes to getting on stage with a big band and putting the band together. Like I certainly didn't when I began, and so I wanted to take that sort of fear or that unknown gap out of it, where a singer could come and jam with the band, but be supported.
Yeah.
Right. Have the rehearsal, know what they're about to go and do, And there's also a night in New York at the Velvet Underground. I think it's the Velvet Underground. And they have this jam that like singers, I saw Chrisette Michele there. Beyonce's mom was there once. Like I've been there maybe three or four times. And every time the singer's there, just like you're gagged every time. Like your jaw is just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to just create that sort of like jump up and do stuff. So it got to evolve to the place where I can get pop-up guests to come in because they either work at Guilt or they're in the audience or they're coming through for whatever reason. So I can have my scheduled guests, and then also I know and I'm aware of and friends with and have dealt with and they've been on the stage to come and just, pop up and enjoy. It's like I feel like a pinch me that I have even been given the opportunity to have a night like this.
And the show, once again, is called Underneath the Harlem Moon, and so obviously the title lends to the sort of the style of the music that's played there, influences from what was going on in Harlem and Motown and the music that came out of those
R&B, soul, jazz, yeah.
Are you heavily influenced by a lot of that as an artist, as a singer?
Oh, incredibly, absolutely. Like I've been lucky enough to go up to Harlem, not necessarily take in music there, but just to like see what the world looks like or looked like, and it's just so different from what we have in Canada to a certain extent, at least on the West Coast, and I've always been so fascinated with it. In fact, the very first tour I ever had for my very first album, I called it the Underneath the Harlem Moon tour. And that's where the name came from. And that came from like a record, like a really old, I don't even know when, from 20s or something, a record that has, the title on it and this woman kind of in a pose in an Art Deco style. And that's kind of where I got the name from. And I've always been fascinated with that sort of world, like the Harlem Renaissance and like Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes and that really sort of elevated, intelligent, amazing Black community from that's been for so long.
Yeah.
And somehow is the ones who are able to always move forward this Black excellence kind of situation. Yeah.
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 You mentioned, New York jumping across the border.
Yeah.
Into, Canada, obviously. You've got a show, Hey Viola, that you've toured across Canada.
Yeah.
Which is about Viola Desmond.
Yeah.
She obviously from Nova Scotia. You talk a little bit about the creation of that show. What the experience that you've had touring it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's another thing where it's like, I can't believe that I'm doing this. Like there are so many projects right now for me, like all the projects that I'm doing, actually, there's nothing left that's not like, wow, I feel so blessed and lucky to be doing this. How did I ever get to be the one to do this? Which I think is just really cool. And I think it's just a matter of honestly just pulling the trigger at the right time and going for it, not asking questions, not doubting yourself, just do the work, right? And so this started because I auditioned for another musical called The Chelsea Hotel, which is the music of Leonard Cohen, created by Tracy Power. And so before I had even auditioned for that, I saw that musical and I met Tracy, and I met her because her partner was my mentor at the Citadel to build a show called Black for the 50th anniversary of the Citadel. So all of this is like tiny steps that lead to other things, right? And so I was auditioning finally in 2017 for her musical, and I got the part. I did the musical. But at that audition, she said, come with me to have some lunch. We were on Granville Island. So there's the setting. And she said, I've got this idea. Do you know who Viola Desmond is? I was like, yeah, she's the lady who's going to be on our $10 bill soon, right? And she goes, yeah, what else do you know about her? Exactly.
Which is everyone's like,
I don't.
Yeah.
Right? Why is this woman on our $10 bill? What's, not necessarily what's so special, but what is so special? What is taking her to that next level that she's on a Canadian banknote, for goodness sakes? And who made this decision and how and why? And so that's why we decided to make a show out of it, to find out ourselves, to then educate the public and the masses, and to figure out who this fantastic, incredible woman was. And so that's how we started the creation of it. She said, okay, you do music, I'll do script, you grab whatever songs you think will fit. So we decided to go with music from the 1930s to the 60s, basically within the time frame of her life, and that she would have been hearing the music. So it could actually be a soundtrack of music she would have maybe internalized and felt and heard. So then I collected probably over 50 songs. There's 17 in the final show. And Tracy basically brilliantly wove, after we did our research of Wanda Robson, her sister's book and all of that, and did all the digging we could find, because after a certain point, after the court case and after her life sort of took a turn, there's hardly any information about her.
Yeah, she went to Montreal and then New York, I believe, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody really knows what, the details of what happened.
Right.
And so there's a lot of speculation, or we had to kind of like really dig for sort of personal resources. And so Tracy wove this incredible sort of perspective of the story. Obviously, it's all biographical information, but around the music, and then it's just very much a one-woman conversation with a band to the audience. And actually, I was able to meet multiple of her family members on these tours.
Oh, neat.
I was able to meet a woman who was actually on the board to choose that the $10 bill was going to have her face on it. There's been a lot of really neat, interactions where I've gotten to be like, this is so much bigger than me. And I feel I just feel like a vessel for the information and the ability to share this stuff. I am simply a wand, or a tool in the bigger picture, right? Just like with Harlem Moon, I feel like as lucky as I am to do it, and as much as it's my night, it's like I just sort of feel like this conduit for it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm just a vessel in which this magic can flow through. And I just have to be present for it. I just need to show up and let it happen, and then it'll always happen.
It just kind of moves.
Right?
Yeah.
It's weird, but that's how I think of it. Because otherwise, your ego is probably going to blow up to like, that. And then, and number two, it's like, I think the faster you're going to crash or fall if you feel like you're carrying that much on your shoulders. Like we were on tour and I had both of my kids with me. Gabriel,
you toured with your kids?
I toured with my kids.
You should drink.
Let's drink to that. You're right. Now, after the fact, Jesus, yeah, let's do a real cheers there. Oh, Lordy. Is mezcal for... Oh, yeah, that's good. Is mezcal for sipping, or is it for chugging?
I mean, yeah, I think it's for sipping, but you can
it's for
shoot.
sipping.
You can shoot anything.
I'm not a shooter, Wait, hold on. Is that a bug?
That's a scorpion, I believe.
There's a scorpion in the bottle, people.
There's a scorpion in the bottle.
Jesus. I don't know if I'm okay with this. Oh, Lordy. But yes, my kids came with me. Actually, I toured with Lily since she was 2 months old. I was pregnant with her, and I had done one of those showcases where they book you as a block booking, and I did it before I was pregnant. And then I got pregnant, I booked the whole tour, and I called them to say, I'm going to be bringing my 2-month-old now, so just so you know, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, you're going to still do this tour? And I'm like, yeah, why not? I didn't know any different. I didn't know that I couldn't do it. So I was just like, talk to my husband, and he's like, we deal with the problems when they arise. Let's just do it. Because
Yeah.
he was off on parental leave. So he came with us on tour. He was our driver. He, helped pack and load and unload and everything else. And luckily enough, we had a small enough band and we could get gear at each of the places that we could all fit into one car and with the baby. So there was 4 band people, baby, and my husband. And, we made it happen. We did 17 shows in 11 days. With bursting milky boobs and tiny little baby in tow. And
But you pulled it off.
we just did it.
Yeah.
It's what it is,
No one told you couldn't do it.
No one
so
told
you're
I
gonna do
couldn't,
it.
so why didn't I do it, right? And then comes the next tour, which Lily was about 6 months at that point. We went to the island and did all these other tours. And that was like COVID happened. She was 7 months and it was February of 2020 and we were in Penticton. We all got the norovirus and we missed the last week of our tour. And we were sick as dogs. Like it was the worst. I don't think I've been that sick. COVID wasn't even that bad for me. It was like one of those stomach flus that you just feel like you want to die.
Yeah.
And so we all came home from that, missed the last week of the tour, and then everything shut down. And then, fast forward 2 years and second baby's there. And Hey Viola only had its debut, world premiere, I should say, in 2020 in that little window of October 2020 when theaters could have 50 people.
Right.
And it was extremely strict protocol, but you could still perform in
still go,
theaters.
yeah.
So we did it. Again, we just didn't ask questions and just like, this is happening, so let's do it.
How big was the tour?
The tour in 2022 was 10 weeks altogether. And Gabriel was born in January, and we started touring in April. They wanted to start touring in February, and I was like,
let's just give
no.
it a couple months.
Just give me like a second to recover.
second.
Yeah. And so he was 3 months turned 4 in Kamloops. We were there for 3 weeks. And then we took a short break, went to, where did we go after that? But then anyways, I can't remember. But then we had headed all the way east. So, no, that's what it was. We opened at the Anvil again. Then we were in Kamloops for 3 weeks. Then we came home. Then we went East Coast. We were in Gananoque. We were in Charlottetown. That was last, actually. And in between, we were in Hudson, Quebec. And it was in Hudson that I met a couple of her family members. And it was fantastic. But like, dang, 2 kids in tow.
Yeah.
So all day long, I was totally occupied with the kids. We'd go to the beach. We'd do this. We'd have an activity. I'd make sure that we always got out of the house. And then I'd be home by X amount of time.
And then you got to go do a show.
Then I got to go to the show. And then I'd come home from the show. And then a kid would attach to me. And then I'd wake up early with them and we'd start all over again, right?
Are there...
Lily was also potty training at the time.
Oh, that's fun.
It was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there plans to do another tour?
Yeah.
Of the show?
Yeah, we're
coming
going
up?
out. We're going out again this year.
This year?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. April 13th to the 23rd,
And-
we're in Richmond. So we're at the Gateway Theater
Yeah.
there in Richmond. I think that'll be the biggest theater that we played in because we're always in
That's a nice
cabaret
theater.
style
It's
things.
a
But
beautiful
yeah,
theater.
it's gorgeous in there.
Yeah.
And then we got a week at Stratford.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? We failed to mention that we workshopped this show at Guild.
Yeah, we
Right?
did. Yeah.
Guilt and Co.
Yeah.
always is
that's
like
where I-
this
that's
like
where I saw
through
it.
line in my life that is darn amazing. And I was pregnant with Lily at that time. So it's like I kind of like count these markers as like, how old were my kids? Did they exist at the time? Did they come with me on a crazy tour? So we workshopped this at Guilt and then, a few months later went on tour in Northern BC. And then, so yeah, I've been busy since 2019. I haven't stopped since 2019. Yeah.
So you've got up and coming 2023. You have got this show underneath you.
Yeah.
And how big is the tour this year? Is it same?
Oh, that's a good question. We're not going to do like 7 weeks on the road again.
Right.
That was a long time.
Like I'm gonna learn from
From
my
these
life.
situations. Yeah. So I think the longest we're out is maybe like 2 weeks, and that'll be in October. So we do Richmond, and then we go to Regina, and then we're going to do Stratford in July, and then there's like a 2-week tour in the Kootenays in the fall. So
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be good.
You mentioned her Violet's sister, Wanda Robson.
Yeah.
Because her story of getting an official free pardon, which is in Canada, it's different than a pardon.
Right.
Because a pardon, when the Canadian government hands down a pardon for something, there's still that admission of wrongdoing. It's like you're being given this pardon where we're removing the guilt, but we're not removing the act. A free pardon is an admission from the government that the law was wrong at the time of the so the distinction. That, she's got a really cool story about getting that recognition for her sister, and also getting that official historical stamp.
Yes. Yes.
And that was just in 2010, I believe.
See, I didn't know that distinction. That's amazing. Yeah, isn't that unreal that it has?
Yeah, 2010. 2010, she was, I think in 2010 they put her photo up in the Houses of Government in Nova Scotia.
Right.
But that's, colloquially, for people who don't really know who Violet Desmond is, I've heard her referred to many times, because everyone knows who Rosa Parks is.
Yes.
And I've heard her referred to many times as, she's Canada's Rosa Parks.
Yes.
But more accurately,
she came first.
She came first. 9 years. 9 years before she refused to move.
Yes.
Refused to go upstairs in the theater. Mm-hmm. Was when Rosa Parks refused to move her seat.
Yes.
And I think that's a really glossed over historical point.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially in Canada, like you said, when you were asked, "Do you know who Violet Desmond is?" Your response was, "Yeah, she's going on the $10 bill." What else do you know about her? Not much.
Yeah.
I didn't learn who Violet Desmond was until she was going on the $10 bill.
Right.
Well, who's this person on the $10 bill?
Yeah. And now she's in the curriculum at schools, but
which is amazing.
It is, and it blows my mind. And little kids have interviewed me about this, and it's really cute. But that probably only happened after the $10 bill too. Right. So within the last 5 years.
Within the last 5 years. That's it's mind blowing. It was in 1945 or 1946.
46. 46. Yeah.
So what was that? 60.
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
And she was charged with defrauding the province.
Isn't that insane?
For a penny.
Exactly.
For 1 cent, she was charged with, and I think you cover this in your show, right?
Oh yeah.
The charge. Yeah. To sit upstairs was X amount of cents.
That's right.
Which had a $2 tax attached to it.
That's right.
And the charge to sit downstairs was 20 cents and 30 cents.
That's
which
right.
had a $3 tax attached to it.
A 3-cent tax and a 2-cent tax.
3 cents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then she gets arrested that night.
Yes.
And the next morning at 9 a.m., she's before a judge without representation.
Without being told that she could even talk to a lawyer or call or make a phone call even. She sat in a jail cell for 12 hours without ever lying down or doing, or succumbing to the moment. And Tracy and I really think about that, and we're like, can you imagine sitting somewhere
upright in a jail cell the entire night?
Just proud and steadfast, I will not let this break me.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
It's amazing. Oh. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I've spent the night in jail. There's no way I was going to sit up. I'm going to fall asleep.
Exactly. Right. I can't imagine sitting up anywhere for 12 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that obviously we're talking about this now, a couple days before February.
You're right. Black History Month.
History Month. And I just recently watched, I don't know if you've seen Amend. It's a documentary on Netflix, hosted by Will Smith. It's about the 14th Amendment of the United States.
Oh, okay.
Which the 13th Amendment was after the Emancipation Proclamation. The 13th Amendment was the amendment that abolished slavery, but the 14th Amendment was the amendment that granted rights of citizenship to all persons naturalized or born in the United States. So it's everything that they know of in the United States about what it is to be free, is from the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
The abolishment of bans on interracial marriage, the ability for same-sex marriages, the women's rights movement, the civil rights movement, all hinged coming from the 14th Amendment.
Oh, wow.
Which is the bulk of which I only just learned about. But there's this segment in it that I think is really, really neat. There's Larry Wilmore, who's a really talented comedy writer, really, really funny guy. He's talking about the era in Jim Crow in the United States when the rallying cry for like racism light was separate but equal.
Right.
And how separate can never be equal was kind of what the point he was making. And he even he even broke apart the word separate. And he's like, in its nature, it's a violent word.
Yeah.
Separate, to break apart.
To break apart.
And he really poignantly kind of points out like all of the separations in Jim Crow, like the segregation, the specificity of those things. But then he goes on to say, and I'm paraphrasing here, he goes on to say, we're still so separate that we need a whole separate month just so you know our contribution in history.
Jeez.
And I grew up in the States, and as someone,
I always forget that.
yeah, and as someone that grew up with the American education system,
Right.
which is not great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you learn about Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, George Washington Carver, but you don't really learn anything other than the fact that he's the guy who invented peanut butter, and that's it.
What?
I was a grown-ass man before I even knew who Frederick Douglass was.
Wow. And
And the fact that like they teach in the United States, they teach about the American Civil War. Obviously, it's like you go through every single year in American school. And I went to high school in Canada, so I had a different high school. But every single year in elementary school, you do history. There's a part on the Civil War, and there's a part about Lincoln,
Wow.
and there's a part about the fact that they can even teach any of that subject about Lincoln without the contribution of Frederick Douglass
Yes.
is absurd. And you mentioned now that recognition for Viola Desmond started coming out around 2010.
Yeah.
She was formally recognized and pardoned by the Supreme Court of Canada.
Yep.
And now she's in the curriculum. And I don't know if much has changed since the 30 years since I was in elementary school in the United States. But I guess my question is there a like the you talk about the importance of Black History Month to you, and is there like because every year it comes around and I'm always shocked and a little bit stunned by how uneducated I am, and how I was educated in a formal education system about this country and about the country that I grew up in, and how all these little pockets of information that they only tell you about once a month.
Right.
And
how is that supposed to stick?
how is it supposed to stick?
Yeah.
And when does it become history that we celebrate
All the time.
12 months of the year?
Well, ain't that the heaviest question
Yeah.
today? I think I have to credit the weird pandemic for doing one thing. And well, there's a few positives, there's a lot of negatives, but there was a few positives. I like to focus on positives. And the George Floyd awareness of things really even to me, because I was educated in the same system that you were for high school, right? Of course, I was here my whole life for school in Canada, in Alberta, of which some of the government there was somebody who wanted to take Native studies out of the, like Indigenous studies were recently wanted to remove it from curriculum. Like, it's insane to me still that there's censorship to the point of like manipulation constantly. And honestly, I don't think that's ever going to change. So I think the only way that you can have Black history, Indigenous history, queer history, anything that's been sort of omitted from the norm is by embracing it yourself, is by doing it yourself. It's by educating your children, educating yourself, educating your peers, sharing that information. And that's how we make it every day. It's never going to get into the school system like we want it to. And if we do, it's going to take 3 years for them to, do whatever it is that they have to do rather than now. right? And I think what needs to happen is things need to happen now. Like, if you wait 3 years, like, think about waiting 3 years to just put some real historic information into a curriculum. Why does it take so long?
Why does it take 3 years?
Why is it taking so long? You know,
especially when you know that they reprint textbooks every year so they can sell new ones to the students.
Well, there you go, right? There's always this funny little gross like cover up to so much of our lives. And gosh, has it ever been aggravating me lately? You know what I mean? The one story to distract you from what's over here, you know, everything that's just sort of like a bit of a game. And now that we've shed light on it, or it's getting worse or whatever, I just think like we got to take all of this stuff under our own control. And I think that we have to educate ourselves, be in our own communities, make sure that we are looking for real, historic, factual information when we are doing our research, you know, and have conversations and be open to this stuff. Things like this very podcast. You know what I mean? Like, we just have to kind of take matters into our own hands to a certain extent. And I think that education is wonderful. School is wonderful. All these things, the social aspect is wonderful. My daughter has just started preschool and I see the benefits of that. Of course, all she's doing is playing with blocks and painting. I don't know, you know, they're not giving her any information yet. But there's also, I think, this really massive thing that especially with children, we have to, as parents, take the lead, as parents, as mentors, as influence on young people, if you don't even have kids, because everyone has an ability to influence, right? Just to be really direct and tell them the truth and speak honesty and information to them. And as much as, you know, you're only going to learn about, you know, those 4 people or something in US or even Canadian, like, honestly, I don't remember much of what I learned in school. I can't tell you why, but I was just too interested in being a singer, I guess. No, I don't know. But, you know, like, I can hardly remember any social studies. Like, I remember learning about Russia more than and the czars and like that whole regime. And I loved it because I had a great teacher who taught it. But I don't remember ever learning about any Canadian or American Black history.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like you say, you feel like, gosh, this is how much I don't know. Well, I don't know it either. And that's my background to a certain extent, right? Like, my parents come from the Caribbean, but it doesn't mean that I can't identify with the Canadian Black history because, you know, for example, Eleanor Collins came from Kentucky, moved to Edmonton, grew up there, moved here. She became the very first Black person to ever have her own TV show under her name, The Eleanor Show on CBC, 1954 or something. 2 years later, I think it was, that Nat King Cole was the first Black person to do it after. But she came first, just like Viola came first, a Canadian. Right. And we're breaking ground and we're doing all this stuff, but it's like we hardly celebrate it. We hardly bring it to light. She should have a statue somewhere in Vancouver, as far as I'm concerned. She's still alive and she's killing it. She's, you know, the Order of Canada and this and that. But it's like, why don't we just straight up know about it? Just like we know John A. MacDonald or, you know. Yeah. Right.
And why is that guy on the on the bill?
Yeah.
What
right?
did he do?
Yeah, exactly. So.
You mentioned something just in you were talking there about not remembering much of your education because you always knew you wanted to be a singer.
Kind of. I mean, I went to science. I got a science degree, but I still somehow.
You got a science degree?
I have a science degree, but somehow I still like managed to make singing my priority.
It's funny. Sidebar. I just watched this. I think there's a podcast called 70 over 70. Which my partner Freya, who you know, has been really into, and it's a neat podcast. It's this guy just interviewing people over 70 about their lives, about their experience. And there's this one guy who's a scientist, and he said every year we lose so many scientists at the junior high school level because everyone's born a scientist. Everyone is born with that curiosity. You see the curiosity in a child and how they look at something and how they want to know everything about everything. Yeah. Why? And then the eventual answer is because stop asking me questions. But you get into the school level, and it's just the way it's taught. It's so bleeding boring
Yes.
that so many. But I didn't know that about it. They have a science degree.
Yeah, well, technically, it's a Bachelor of Science in Human Ecology, which is studying textiles and clothing with a major in design and product development and a minor in. It's kind of like the creative version of science, but it really it spoke to me, and honestly, through high
It's
school,
like how dentists are doctors.
exactly. Come on. But yeah, in high school, I mean, I loved biology. I loved chemistry. I loved that stuff. That's what really drew me forward. I was in drama. I liked it. I never took a music class in high school. Like, I only started singing when I was 17, when I was kicked off the cheerleading team and I had nothing else to do. And my mom's like, well, I found this in the community paper. Go to this singing lesson.
You went to the singing lesson, and that's what started it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the journey from that moment of being like, I'm not a cheerleader anymore, to
It's heartbreaking.
okay,
That was
now I'm
my
a singer.
life. That was my life. Like, I was a cheerleader since grade 7. I was so nervous and scared to like get into it, but I did. And my aunt was the one who picked me up from school every day. And I said, there's cheerleading practice, like tryouts. Should I do it? Maybe I just won't do it. She's like, get in there, go now. And so I did. And from grade 7 to grade 12, it was like I was obsessed. Like, that was my performance outlet, and that's what I could do to like really shine, because I had a big voice and I could do all the dancing and jumping and choreography and the technical stunts and all that stuff. So fun. And then there was like teacher drama in grade 12 that sort of disbanded the whole team, and I was the ringleader apparently. Like, I'm not a ringleader, sorry. Like, I'll give you my opinion, but I'm not a ringleader. Like,
Yeah.
I'm 17. And you're
you
like,
were the revolutionary.
I was, right?
You had to be silenced.
Yeah, I could not be. Yeah, exactly. I had to be silent. So I just said, okay, y'all go ahead. I'm good. And I found singing, and I think you'd have to ask my mom or like somebody around me whether or not it affected me as much as it did. But
Can we get our mother on the phone?
Mom. Yeah. And, but it just felt like it was sort of a natural transition, because the teacher, and I was still in drama class and I was still doing all of that. And the teacher that I had was so darn cool and captivating and pretty and, like, she just made it seem really awesome. She was an opera singer who, I studied with her for like 2.5 or so years. And then she got a contract in Winnipeg to do opera. And so I was just like, whoa, like, that's cool. So I was singing arias. She introduced me to musical theater and all these sorts of things. My dad gave me an Etta James CD, and that's where I found that sort of like bluesy voice.
Which one?
The Greatest Hits one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Greatest Hits album. And then now I have the record of it. I play it at home and I'm like, this is still so good. Like, how lucky was I to have this slid in, in my pocket when I was that young to like, kind of experience that. It was just so cool.
What was the trend? How? When did you start performing? How did that from that moment of singing lessons when you were 17?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You had a James record. When did you know you wanted to perform? When did you start performing?
Like, as a singer.
As a singer, yeah.
It took a while. So I kept on faking it till I made it, if you will. And I got accepted to a performing arts college when I was 20, turned 21, I think. Canadian College of Performing Arts in Victoria. So this was my first opportunity to move out of Edmonton, live by myself, do what I wanted to do. And it was like 50% funded by the government, but still, it was like, my parents still had to pay like a $7,500.
That's you said it's in Victoria?
Yeah, in Oak Bay over there. Yeah. And so they let me do it. And they paid my $500 rent. And
$500 rent. Oh God, that makes me want to cry.
I know.
And this was
2004.
2004. Yeah, it was about the same time that I moved to Vancouver, and my rent was $300.
Oh my! What? Yeah. Gee whiz, hey. So I just kind of again took that leap. It's like, I don't know what about it, my personality or whatever it is, but like, I just took a leap and I went and did it. And then fast forward to, I could have gone back for a second year, but I decided to move to England to explore my options there. Because again, I'm just like, I'm a free spirit. I'll do anything. Let's go to the top. Nothing happened there except for me auditioning for a bunch of girl groups and, and not being successful because I wasn't, quote, sexy and sassy enough. And I didn't want to wear a wig. I wanted my natural hair and they were not into it, for the look of this girl group and many others of the time.
I got turned down for a girl group for the exact same reasons.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what? You are sexy and sassy enough, Brandon. Here, right now, I'm telling you. Yeah. And so I came back. I went back to university. That's when I went and got my Bachelor of Science. And my mom was like, you haven't sung for a long time. Like, what's going on? And I recorded an album because there was a grant that someone told me about called 10K20, where you got $10,000 from the government to record this album. But it was sort of this like inner circle of jazz musicians who were really in the mix of, my phone is ringing, why is it ringing? In the mix of, because I have children, I just feel like nervous about these things. Gavin is calling. Do you want to answer? I think that, what was I saying? We were talking about music. So there's this 10K20 grant. And, but the jazz musicians were kind of like, they had a chokehold on it. This was 20 years ago. So I'm like, oh, what am I talking about? Government issues, right? But this guy, he was a drummer in Edmonton, a jazz drummer. And I said, you know what I really like? I like this Radiohead cover. Can I do this Radiohead cover? And Nina Simone, isn't she cool? I want to do this song. And he's like, nope, we're going to do straight ahead jazz. That's what this album's going to be. And I'm like, $10,000 to me when I was 20 something years old seemed like $100,000 and the biggest opportunity of my life. And so 3 hard, tumultuous weeks later, I remember I was in school at university and I went out into the hallway while I was in a class doing a workshop, like some sort of textile painting or something. And I just said, I gave him a call and it took all of my guts and glory to do it. I gave him a call and I said, I'm sorry, you're fired. He flipped the F out on me. He's like, you'll never make it in the scene. Da, 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 da. You're going to just...
You'll never work in this town again. See here.
Exactly. It was literally that story. And so what happened was at the time, there was a radio station that was having a contest for singers, and Krisha Turner had come out of this contest. And I called them up and I said, who do you guys use? Who do you work with to make these singers? Like the deal was that they got to go and record a song or whatever. And I said, who do you use? And they said, Hip Joint in Vancouver. So I called Hip Joint. And Hip Joint said, yeah, we'll do your album for you. 10 songs, $10,000. Okay, as long as you share your writing credits with our producer. He's a young guy, but he'll be great. Phil Lehman. He was amazing. And I flew to Vancouver with my mom, and we stayed in the where the Belmont used to be. What's that hotel on Nelson and Granville?
Yeah.
We stayed there for 10 days. And I got up every morning, and we had anywhere from 8 to 12-hour days in the studio. We wrote the songs, recorded the skeletons right there. I went home. He fleshed out the rest with local musicians, sent me the mixes, and that's how my first album was made. I recorded an album way before I ever even performed. And I mean, I performed at Performing Arts College, but not like this. Not with a band, not in front of audiences, nothing like this. And so I had this record in my hand, and I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this, right? Even the photo was like a friend who was in my class at school who was kind of a fashion guy, and he took the pictures for me, and we styled it, and he did the Photoshop on it, and that's my album cover, And it's like, I can't believe that I did that. Like, what kind of weird little kid, chutzpah, 20-year-old punk was I? But somehow I had, like, now, 20-something, well, not quite 20 years later, I'm like, how the hell did I ever,
pull that off? It was the chutzpah.
It was the chutzpah.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have.
It's neat, too, when you have those. And that's actually, I guess to come full circle, you mentioned...
doing.
And Guilt and Company being where you workshopped Viola Desmond, and that, making that phone call to like, who do you use? Hip joint, getting your friend from school to do the do artwork for you. All those like little key components of what a community this town is. And I think a lot of times when people I don't think anybody thinks of Vancouver globally yet. There's a yet there. As a town for arts, as a town for music. There's so much amazing stuff that happens here, and there's so much amazing talent.
So rich.
And there's that sense of community of there really is a group of artists and musicians that play with each other, that help each other out albums. You talk to someone that you've known for years, and they're like, mentioned casually that they're like, oh yeah, I recorded bass on that album like 15 years ago. I'm like, what? Really?
Wow.
And it's just like everything kind of like the way it intermingles. Can you, I guess if there's a question attached to it, can you speak a little bit to being someone that you went to the Canadian College for Performing Arts, which does a lot of musical theater training. You've done musical theater, both, you mentioned Dreamgirls earlier, which was a huge show, not only globally, but it was a huge thing for Vancouver to get that show when they got it.
Yeah.
And then also being a singer, being a performer. I guess can you talk about that, where those two kind of worlds intermingle, where you've got, because they are very distinctive communities and distinctive
like
art
musical
forms.
theater and the music.
Theater and the music, and then where they come together, and the experiences where you've had where they've crossed over.
There is quite a divide. Like, was it last year in November? I did a weekly show at Guilt, and I did like a weekly underneath the Harlem Moon, right? And I brought a musical theater couple of singers in, and they were like, I had continued to perform a lot because of Guilt and Company through the pandemic and through, very weird corporate or virtual performances. But these incredibly talented singers and performers said, we haven't performed for 2.5 years, because they're sort of locked into the structure of musical theater, right? Like there's such a structure, and you audition, and then you have a long contract, and then you've got a month of rehearsal, and then 2 months of, like all of that kind of process. So I find that for me, while the I wouldn't say the art form, the technical portion of it is very related, I think they're such different worlds, and they hardly intersect or overcross, and they kind of cross over in moments like the Harlem Moon, where somebody can come on the stage and kind of do that. And it's just sort of, it's unfortunate that we can't share it even more than we do, because gosh, there's a talented group of people out there that, we don't really know in the music community, or that the musical theater world doesn't really know to come in, because they think, again, we got to wait for this sheet music, and we got to do it like it's on the page, and there's this process, right? We got to wait for the musical director to tell us exactly how and what we need to sing and when we need to sing it, where, then you can just come and freestyle with a band over here. There's quite a divide. And so I think like we could almost work harder to bring it together, because like you said, this talent is just like unbelievably rich here.
Do you see a show like Hey Viola helping to bring those two worlds together?
Kind of. I mean, it's kind of just me, right? Like I wish that I could do more to like expand that, but yes, absolutely. In its sort of like in the bare bones of it is that it's musicians from the music community supporting me in a musical way to make a musical theater show. So it's literally the blending of both worlds. Like we are doing a concert and telling stories in between. It's like the most and least musical theater music show that,
because you're actually doing a concert. And it's like you wrote the script and the music sort of written around each other in a way that you don't normally see in musical theater.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas, especially because you're using songs from the era.
Yeah.
Whereas musical theater, it's just like, they'll be talking and it's like very elevated and then all of a sudden, oh, it's the singing, and the singing is part of the story.
Exactly.
Quite directly.
Exactly.
And you said you toured that show with a band, right?
Yeah.
those
Three-piece
are-
band. And the thing is like the band is so unbelievable that there's only 3 of them on the stage, but 2 people are playing 2 instruments each. Like Steve Charles is playing the upright bass and the electric guitar, and Chris Davis is playing drums and trumpet. And then it's either Mary Anchetta or it's been Jen Lewin in the past who are playing this like unbelievable piano situation. And, people from the audience have commented like, who is that piano player? Because they can see her hands, from the audience, and they're seeing how busy. Because normally you don't
Mary?
really see. Yeah, Mary. Oh,
She's insane.
Oh, she's actually
good.
amazing. Yeah. Another gem from Vancouver who is just like multi-level talent, right? Like,
Yeah.
like not
And she's
just,
played in the city with so many different styles and so many different artists.
and she composes, and she's like a leader. She's a producer. She's, oh my gosh, like unbelievable talent here. And so I've got this dream team behind me who are doing
That's
the job
Mary
of,
Anchetta, by the way, that we're talking about.
yes, this dream team of people who are doing this like multi-level job behind me while I don't even pay attention to them. My every word is, floating upon the ocean that they create of this amazing music. And it's like, I don't have to worry about it. But I'd say that it is that show is the perfect combination of musical theater and music. Like it's exactly that. And that's where I meet. So that's why I say I'm so lucky to do this show. But it's literally been like actually catered to and specifically designed for me.
For you.
So it's like, how can I possibly, I can hardly say, oh, does this make the community better? Well, it's a little selfish. It's just sort of like, that show is mine, all
It's
mine.
mine, baby.
Yeah.
Well, it's an amazing show.
Thank you.
And you're
April 13th to the
April
23rd is the next
when
one.
when is the show at the Gateway Theater?
April, sorry, did I say 3rd? 13th to the 23rd.
13th to the 23rd of April. It's running at the Gateway Theater, and then you take it on the road.
And then we take it to Regina, yeah.
Gateway Theater in Richmond.
That's right.
13th to the 23rd of April. If you can, go see the show. It's a fantastic show.
Yeah, come on down.
And you've still got Harlem Moon going at Guilt and Company first Tuesday of every month.
That's right.
And you sometimes do get sub-hosts when you're out on the road and stuff, but the show still thrives.
The show must go on.
The vessel that you've built is still keeps going.
I won't let her go.
Won't
Yeah,
let her go.
I won't let her go.
It's an amazing thing that happens there. First Tuesday of every month at Guilt and Company. You can see that great show there. Before we sign off, I think that we should finish this.
We gotta finish.
we should finish this.
Cheers. Thanks for
cheers.
the good chat.
Thank you so much for coming down.
You're
this
amazing.
is Krystle Dos Santos. You're fantastic.
So are you. Thank
Cheers.
you. Cheers. Ooh, that's delicious.